We are told that the holiday season is a time for giving, for family, and for joy. But anyone who has worked a shift when the doors lock and the lights dim knows the truth. There is a darkness that hides behind the neon sale signs. You think you know what chaos looks like? It isn't just the stampede of a Black Friday crowd fighting over a television. It's the silence of the storage room at 4 a.m. where a stranger has been watching you work. It's the sweet elderly grandmother reaching into her purse, not for a wallet, but for a butcher's knife. It is the heart-stopping realization that in a sea of thousands of shoppers, the person you love most has vanished without a trace. Tonight, we aren't looking for bargains. We are peeling back the layers of human greed and madness to witness the true horror of the retail world. Lock your doors and settle in. These are the stories the stores don't want you to hear. Let's begin. They say that money cannot buy happiness. But if you stand in the parking lot of a superstore at 3 a.m. on the Friday after Thanksgiving, you will see thousands of people who are willing to bleed to prove that saying wrong. We have turned the holiday season into a contact sport. We have turned generosity into greed. But for those of us who stand on the other side of the counter, the cashiers, the stockers, the security guards, we see something else. We see the mask of civilization slip. We see the moment when a human being becomes something feral. If you are looking for true scary stories to keep you awake, you have come to the right place. Tonight, I am not going to tell you about the deals. I'm going to tell you about the darkness. I am going to tell you about the things that happen when the automatic doors lock and the lights hum in the silence. From the man hiding in the walls to the grandmother with a blade in her purse and the tragic missing person cases that the police never solve. Settle in and get comfortable, especially if you enjoy Let's Read style narrations. Lock your doors, because these are true retail stories from the abyss. Ask yourself, what is the price you are willing to pay? You have to understand the specific kind of exhaustion that comes from working a holiday shift. It isn't just being tired, it is a vibrating numbness in your bones. It was 2019, the year before the world shut down, and I was living through one of those night shift horror stories you read about online. I was working the graveyard shift at a 7-Eleven. Now, usually a convenience store isn't the epicenter of Black Friday horror. We don't sell 60-inch televisions or the latest gaming consoles. But that year, the madness was contagious. It had bled out from the big retailers and infected everyone. The night had been a blur of faces, demanding hands, and the constant piercing chime of the door sensor. Ding dong, it haunts my dreams. By 4 a.m., the war was over. The rush had evaporated, leaving the store in that eerie, fluorescent-lit silence that only exists in the dead of night. The hum of the slushy machine sounded like a jet engine. The air smelled of burnt coffee and floor wax. I was working with two others, a guy we called Bugs, a massive silent biker type who looked like he chewed gravel for breakfast, and January. January was the manager, and I won't lie to you, I was hopelessly in love with her. She was the kind of girl who could make a fluorescent uniform look like high fashion. I had taken the shift just to be near her, hoping that maybe in the quiet hours of the morning, I could finally find the courage to tell her how I felt. But courage wasn't what I found that night. I found a real-life horror story. The store was finally empty, or so I thought. I was leaning against the counter, trying to rub the grit out of my eyes when I realized I had made a mistake. The stupid rookie mistake. Earlier in the rush, I had taken a mountain of cardboard boxes out to the dumpsters, in my haste to get back to the register and help January. I hadn't heard the click of the latch on the heavy steel delivery door. I had left the back door unlocked. It didn't seem like a big deal. Who would be creeping around an alley at 4 a.m.? January had gone into the back stockroom to refill the Cheetos display. I was watching the security monitors, my eyelids heavy, when she came speed-walking out of the back. Her face was the color of ash. Her hands were trembling. She walked right up to me, her voice a terrified whisper. "There's someone in there." My stomach dropped. "What? A delivery guy?" "No." She shook her head, her eyes wide. "A man. He's eating everything." I wanted to be the hero. I wanted to be the guy who protected her. So I grabbed a heavy flashlight and signaled for Bugs to watch the front. I marched toward the stockroom door, puffing out my chest, trying to hide the fact that my knees were shaking. This was turning into a home invasion story, but at my job. I pushed the door open. The smell hit me first. It was a thick, musky scent of unwashed body, odor mixed with the artificial tang of spicy powder and energy drinks. And there he was. In the corner of the small, cramped room, a man had built himself a nest. He had piled up boxes of toilet paper and crates of soda to create a little fortress. He was a massive man, easily 300 pounds, and he had stripped off his winter coat. He was sitting there in just a dirty undershirt and shorts, his pale skin glowing in the dim light. He was surrounded by carnage. Empty wrappers of Twinkies, beef jerky, and bags of Takis were scattered around him like confetti. His face, it's an image I will never forget, was stained blue and red from the dust of the chips. He looked like a grotesque, overgrown toddler. He didn't look aggressive at first. He looked comfortable. He was mid-chew on a stick of jerky when he saw me. He stopped. He blinked slowly like an animal caught in headlights. "Hey," I said, my voice cracking. "Hey, buddy, you can't be back here." He swallowed hard. I saw the realization dawn on him. The fantasy world he had created in our stockroom was shattering. He looked at the empty wrappers. He looked at me. You gotta pay for that," I said, trying to sound authoritative. The man stood up. He was taller than me, much taller. He wiped his dusty hands on his undershirt, leaving streaks of red grease. "Pay," he rumbled. His voice was deep and gravelly. How the hell do you expect me to explain this to my wife?" I was taken aback. "Your wife? Buddy, you broke into a store and ate $300 worth of snacks. I don't care about your wife." I expected shame. I expected an apology. Instead, his face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He pointed a chubby, dust-covered finger at me. "If you didn't want me to eat it," he screamed, spit flying from his mouth, "you shouldn't have left the door open. It was an invitation." It was the twisted logic of a madman. He truly believed that my mistake justified his gluttony. He began to pace, stepping on crunching wrappers. He started bargaining. He offered to split the cost. He offered to work it off. And then he looked at January, who was peeking around the door frame. Then he made a suggestion, a vulgar, disgusting offer that made the blood rush to my ears. "That's it," I snapped. "We're calling the cops." The air in the room changed instantly. The man let out a roar, a primal, frustrated sound, and lowered his shoulder. He charged at me. It was like being hit by a sedan. His mass slammed into my chest, knocking the wind out of me. I flew backward, crashing into a pallet of toilet paper, rolling over in a cloud of dust. But he wasn't trying to fight me. He was trying to escape. He barreled toward the back door the way he had come in. He hit the push bar with all his might, expecting to burst out into the freedom of the alley. Thud. The door didn't budge. Bugs. Beautiful, silent bugs. He'd come around the back and locked it from the outside while we were talking. The man bounced off the steel door, dazed. He spun around, panic wild in his eyes. But before he could charge again, Bugs stepped into the room. Bugs didn't shout, he didn't punch, he just wrapped his massive arms around the guy in a bear hug and squeezed. He pinned the man to the floor, holding him there like a rebellious child until we heard the sirens wailing in the distance. We found out later that the man wasn't homeless. He wasn't a criminal mastermind. He was a father of two, suffering from severe insomnia and stress. He had taken a new medication, Ambien, and had walked out of his house in a fugue state. He didn't even remember leaving his bed. He woke up in handcuffs covered in chip dust with a felony charge hanging over his head. I felt sorry for him eventually, but I never forgot the look in his eyes when he charged me. It was a reminder that the line between a normal suburban dad and a raving lunatic is thinner than we think. All it takes is a pill, an unlocked door, and the hunger of the night. There is something inherently wrong about a large retail store when it is empty. These places are built for noise. They are designed for crowds, for music, for the beep of registers. When you take the people away, the silence feels heavy. It feels watchful. This next story is one of those big box store stories that makes you check the back seats of your car. I learned this lesson the hard way. I used to refuse to work the sales floor on Black Friday. I couldn't handle the screaming. I couldn't handle the fighting, so I made a deal with my manager. I would work the setup shift, the overnight shift before the big day. My job was to build the displays, stack the TVs, and make the store look perfect for the morning chaos. It was just me, a guy named Dave, and a girl named Lisa. We were alone in a massive electronics superstore. The overhead lights were dimmed to save power, leaving the aisles in shadow. The rows of washing machines looked like tombstones. The wall of television stared out with black reflective screens. I was in the home appliance section, building a pyramid of boxes. It was peaceful. I was humming to myself, enjoying the solitude. Then I heard it. Click. Whir. It was a distinct sound. The sound of a refrigerator door breaking its magnetic seal, opening, and then softly closing. I froze. I stood perfectly still, listening. Dave? I called out. Lisa? No answer. I could hear their voices on the other side of the store, laughing about something. They were too far away. I told myself it was just the building settling. Maybe the ice maker in one of the demo units was malfunctioning. I shook it off and moved to the camera section. This was back when camcorders were still a big seller. We had a display of about 20 cameras, all tethered to the shelf, pointing out at the aisle. Lisa walked up to me a few minutes later. She was hugging herself, rubbing her arms as if she were cold. Is there anyone else here tonight? She asked. Her voice was tight. No, I said, putting down a box. Just us three. Why? She looked over her shoulder. I keep feeling like I'm being watched. I was over by the vacuums and I swear I saw a shadow move. A person shadow. It felt like one of those creepy customer stories come to life. It's just the lights, Lisa. It's spooky in here. No, she insisted. Come with me. Look. We walked over to the camera display. I was checking the alignment of the devices when I noticed something odd. One of the high-end camcorders, a black Sony model, was crooked. It wasn't pointing at the aisle like the others. It was angled sharply to the left. I picked it up to straighten it. The screen flickered to life. It was in playback mode. I hit play, expecting to see footage of the ceiling or the floor from when we set it up. I didn't see the ceiling. I saw a face. It was a close-up, extreme and distorted. A man with thick Coke bottle glasses and a heavy, graying mustache was staring directly into the lens. He was breathing heavily, his nostrils flaring. He looked manic. His eyes were darting around as if he were afraid of being caught. "Who is that?" Lisa whispered, stepping closer to me. "He doesn't work here." The video shook, and the angle changed. The next clip wasn't of a face. It was filmed from a low angle, hiding behind a rack of clothes. It showed Lisa. It showed her from an hour ago, stocking the shelves. The camera zoomed in on her. Lisa gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God, that's me." My blood ran cold. This wasn't old footage. This was from tonight. This man was in the store. He was here right now, using our own merchandise to stalk us. This was real footage of a crime in progress. We kept watching. The next clip was even worse. It was filmed from underneath the bathroom stall door. It showed shoes. Lisa's shoes. I felt a wave of nausea. He's been here for hours, I realized. He must have hidden in the bathroom before we locked up. Suddenly, a sound echoed from the very back of the store, near the stockroom. Screech. It was the rusty hinge of the heavy fire door. We all turned in unison. In the dim light, we saw the door to the storage room slowly close. Panic is a strange thing. It can make you run, or it can make you fight. I didn't think. I grabbed a heavy metal pole from a vacuum cleaner display and ran toward the back. Dave and Lisa were right behind me. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice booming in the empty store. "Come out!" We reached the stockroom door. I didn't open it. I grabbed the external locking bar, a heavy steel latch used to secure the room at night, and I slammed it down. Clang. Whoever was in there was trapped. We climbed up on a stack of pallets to look through the small, wire-reinforced window in the door. And there he was. The man from the camera. He had set up a sleeping bag on a pallet of dog food. He was wearing flannel pajamas. He looked cozy. He looked like he was at a slumber party. He was sitting there, holding a bag of chips, just waiting for the store to open the next morning so he could be first in line for the doorbuster deals. He looked up at the window. He saw us staring at him, and he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was a wide, empty predator smile. He waved at us with one finger. We called the police immediately. When they arrested him, they found more than just the sleeping bag. They found a backpack filled with stolen jewelry, and they found the camera. The footage on it went back weeks. He had been doing this for a long time, hiding in stores, watching the staff, filming the women, and living in the shadows of the retail world. He went to jail, but the damage was done. I never worked a night shift again, and to this day, whenever I walk into a public restroom or a quiet aisle, I check the corners. I check the shadows. Because I know now that just because the sign says closed, it doesn't mean you are alone. When we talk about retail horror stories, we usually talk about the customers, but sometimes the monster is wearing a name tag. Sometimes he's the guy standing right next to you. This is one of those scary workplace stories that makes you lose faith in humanity. I worked loss prevention security for a major supermarket chain for nearly 20 years. I've seen it all. I've seen kids stealing candy, and I've seen professionals stealing thousands of dollars in electronics. We catch them, we process them, we ban them. It's part of the job. But then there was Nick. Nick was a transfer from another store. He was an intense guy. He had a military haircut, biceps that strained against his uniform sleeves, and eyes that were cold and flat like a shark's. He took the job way too seriously. He called himself a security officer, not a guard. He talked about tactical takedowns and perimeter breaches. On paper, Nick was a star. His apprehension numbers were through the roof. If someone stole a stick of gum, Nick caught them. He would march them into the security office, slam the door, and spend 30 or 40 minutes processing them. They always left looking shaken, pale, and terrified. We all thought he was just good at his job. We thought he was scaring them straight. I was an idiot for believing that. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the security office fixing a loose wire on the monitor bank. The office had a small supply closet with louvered doors, those wooden slats you can see through. I had stepped inside to grab some cable ties when the door handle jammed. I was stuck. I was about to kick the door open when I heard the main office door unlock. Nick walked in. He was dragging a young woman by the arm. She couldn't be more than 18 or 19. She was crying softly, clutching a purse. "Sit," Nick commanded. She sat in the metal chair, trembling. "Please," she sobbed. "I'm sorry, it was just some makeup. I'll pay for it. Please don't call the police." I stayed quiet in the closet. I wanted to see how Nick handled this. Nick didn't sit behind the desk. He leaned against it, crossing his arms, looming over her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a badge. It wasn't his store ID. It was a heavy silver shield that looked like a police badge. "You don't understand," Nick said, his voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial whisper. "I'm not just store security. I work for a special division. Federal." The girl's eyes went wide. "Federal? You didn't just shoplift," Nick lied smoothly. "The items you took, they are tagged. You've triggered a silent alarm for a domestic terror watch list. You are in serious trouble, sweetheart. We're talking black sites. We're talking disappearing without a trial." It was insane. It was the plot of a bad movie. But this girl was young. She was scared, and she had just committed a crime. She believed him. "Oh God," she cried. "I didn't know. Please, I just want to go home." Nick stepped closer. "I can help you. I can make the alarm go away, but I need to verify that you aren't wired. I need to make sure you aren't carrying any recording devices for the organization." My blood turned to ice. I realized with a sick, sinking feeling what he was doing. This wasn't about theft. This was about power. This was about a predator cornering prey. "Stand up," he ordered. "Unbutton your shirt. I need to check for wires." The girl hesitated, tears streaming down her face. "Do I have to? Do you want to go to prison for 20 years? He threatened. I watched through the slats of the closet door as she reached for her buttons with shaking hands. Nick pulled out his phone. He wasn't checking for wires. He was positioning the camera. I saw red. I have a daughter. I have a wife. The rage that filled me in that moment was blinding. It wasn't a professional anger. It was a primal, protective fury. I didn't think about procedure. I didn't think about my job. I drew my leg back and kicked the closet door with everything I had. Crack. The wood splintered and the door flew open. Nick spun around, his face draining of color. The girl screamed and jumped back. I stepped out of the closet. I am not a violent man by nature, but that day I was a weapon. I didn't say a word. I crossed the room in 2 strides and drove my shoulder into Nick's chest. We crashed into the filing cabinets. He tried to fight back, but he was a bully, and bullies are cowards when the odds are even. I grabbed him by his collar and slammed him against the wall. I smashed his phone on the desk. "Get out," I roared at the girl. "Run. Go now." She grabbed her bag and bolted out the door, never looking back. I turned my attention back to Nick. He was whimpering, holding his nose, blood leaking between his fingers. I was just following protocol," he stammered. "If I ever see you again," I whispered, leaning close to his ear. "If I ever see you wearing a badge, or a uniform, or even a crossing guard vest, I will end you. Do you understand me?" He nodded, terrified. Nick quit the next day. He disappeared. I never reported him to the police because I didn't know who the victims were, and honestly, I didn't trust the system to punish him enough. Sometimes, justice doesn't come from a judge. Sometimes, it comes from a broken closet door and a father's rage. Black Friday is usually a story about greed, about getting things. But for me, the story is about loss, about the things that are taken away and never returned. This next story is one of those unsolved mysteries that haunts the internet. But for me, it is real life, and it stands out among true retail stories. A few years ago, my boyfriend Mario and I took a trip to Mexico City. We were young, deeply in love, and naive. We came from rough neighborhoods, so for us, walking through the high-end malls of the city felt like walking through paradise. The marble floors, the smell of expensive perfume, the golden lighting. It was a dream. Mario was my protector. He was the kind of man who always walked on the street side of the sidewalk. He held my hand so tight, like he was afraid I would float away. The day before, we had visited a shrine to Santa Muerte, Our Lady of Death. In our culture, we respect death. We offer gifts. We pray for safe passage. I didn't know then how closely death was walking beside us. We were in a massive shopping complex on the outskirts of the city. It was busy, bustling with holiday shoppers. We felt safe. We felt invisible in the crowd. "I need to use the bathroom," Mario said, squeezing my hand. "I'll be right back. Stay here, okay?" "I'm going to look at the lingerie store," I teased him, pointing to a shop with lace mannequins in the window. "Don't take too long." He smiled, that beautiful, warm smile that lit up his eyes. He turned and walked down the long corridor toward the restrooms. I watched him go until he turned the corner. That was the last time I ever saw him. This became one of those customer horror stories, where the customer never returns. I went into the store. I bought a white lace nightgown. I imagined the look on his face when I wore it. I imagined our future. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I walked back to the hallway. It was empty. "Mario?" I called out. People walked past me, ignoring the girl calling for her boyfriend. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach, a sense of dread that I couldn't explain. I walked to the men's room door. I pushed it open. "Mario, are you in there?" Silence. I checked every stall. Empty. I checked the sinks. Dry. I ran out and checked the women's room, thinking maybe he was confused. Nothing. I began to run. I ran to the security guard, screaming that my boyfriend had vanished. They didn't believe me at first. They rolled their eyes. "He probably got cold feet, honey," one of them said. "He probably ran off with a local girl." "No," I screamed. "You don't know him." Finally, after an hour of begging, they checked the cameras. We sat in the cold security office, watching the grainy black and white footage. We saw Mario walk down the hallway, We saw him enter the restroom, and the video just kept playing. Minutes ticked by. Shoppers walked past, but Mario never walked out. He didn't leave through the door. The police arrived and searched the bathroom. They found the only other exit, a small narrow window high up on the back wall. It led to a dark service alley behind the mall, a blind spot where the cameras couldn't see. They found scuff marks on the windowsill. They found a single shoe in the alley. His shoe. The detectives told me it was likely a kidnapping. They said gangs sometimes wait in those alleys. They pulled people through the windows, snatched from the safety of a mall into the darkness of a van in seconds. It was a cartel horror story come to life. I never found him. I don't know if he is alive, working in some camp, or if he is dead, buried in the desert. Every night I dream of that hallway. I dream that I ran after him. I dream that I grabbed his hand and never let go. But when I wake up, the bed is empty. The white lace nightgown sits in my drawer, still in the wrapper, a ghost of a memory from the day the world swallowed the man I loved. We end tonight with the aftermath, the psychological toll, because the scary thing isn't always the violence. It's the madness that lingers in your mind long after the sale is over. Whether you have your own Walmart stories or Target stories, this is what makes working retail scary. I worked security during a Black Friday riot. And yes, it was a riot. I saw a grandmother elbow a teenager in the throat for a toaster. I saw two grown men wrestling on the floor, tearing a television box to shreds. I saw a woman fall and get trampled by a stampede of people who cared more about a discount than a human life. I had to dive into the crowd to drag her out, getting kicked and spit on in the process. That kind of thing changes you. It makes you realize that civilization is just a thin coat of paint. Scratch the surface and we are all just animals. But the creepiest thing that happened to me wasn't in the store. It was a week later. It felt like a glitch in the Matrix or something from the Creepy Work Stories archives. I was walking to the grocery store late at night. The streets were quiet. The air was crisp. I was trying to decompress, trying to forget the chaos of the week. I got the feeling I was being followed. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I turned around. About 50 feet behind me, there was a guy. He was wearing a baby blue hoodie and stark white sweatpants. It was a weird outfit, too clean, too bright for the night. He wasn't doing anything threatening. He was just walking at my exact pace. I stopped to tie my shoe. He stopped. He pretended to look at his phone. I started walking again. He started walking. It felt like one of those retail worker horror stories you see on forums. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. I ducked into a 24-hour bodega, hoping to lose him. I walked down the cereal aisle, my hands shaking. I grabbed a box of cornflakes just to look busy. I looked up toward the front of the store. The guy in the blue hoodie was there. He was standing at the end of the aisle, just staring at me. He wasn't shopping, he was watching. Then the door chime rang, ding dong. Another man walked in. My breath caught in my throat. This second man was wearing the exact same outfit. Baby blue, hoodie, white sweatpants, same brand, same fit. He walked up and stood right next to the first guy. They didn't speak. They didn't look at each other. They just stood shoulder to shoulder looking at me. Then a third man entered. Same clothes, same dead expression. It felt like a glitch in the Matrix. It felt like a nightmare where the logic of the world breaks down. Were they a gang? Was it a prank? Was it a cult? They weren't fighting, they weren't yelling, they were just present. a wall of pastel blue. I abandoned my cart. I ran to the back of the store and exited through the emergency fire. Escape. I ran all the way home, locking my door and pushing a chair under the handle. I never saw them again, but sometimes when I'm in a crowd, when I see a sea of people fighting for items they don't need, I look for that shade of blue. We chase deals. We chase objects. We fight over plastic and wires. And in the end, we are all just strangers in a crowd, wearing our uniforms, walking blindly into the dark. So, the next time you see a sale sign, the next time you feel the urge to push through a crowd, ask yourself, what is the real cost? Because sometimes the price you pay isn't on the tag. Good night, and stay safe. And if you enjoyed these 9 terrifying tales from retail workers, consider the next time you walk into a store and who might be watching you. We end tonight with the aftermath, the psychological toll, because the scary thing isn't always the violence. It's the madness that lingers in your mind long after the sale is over. Whether you have your own Walmart stories or Target stories, this is what makes working retail scary. I worked security during a Black Friday riot. And yes, it was a riot. I saw a grandmother elbow a teenager in the throat for a toaster. I saw 2 grown men wrestling on the floor, tearing a television box to shreds. I saw a woman fall and get trampled by a stampede of people who cared more about a discount than a human life. I had to dive into the crowd to drag her out, getting kicked and spit on in the process. That kind of thing changes you. It makes you realize that civilization is just a thin coat of paint. Scratch the surface and we are all just animals. But the creepiest thing that happened to me wasn't in the store. It was a week later. It felt like a glitch in the Matrix or something from the Creepy Work Stories archives. I was walking to the grocery store late at night. The streets were quiet. The air was crisp. I was trying to decompress, trying to forget the chaos of the week. I got the feeling I was being followed. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I turned around. About 50 feet behind me, there was a guy. He was wearing a baby blue hoodie and stark white sweatpants. It was a weird outfit, too clean, too bright for the night. He wasn't doing anything threatening. He was just walking at my exact pace. I stopped to tie my shoe. He stopped. He pretended to look at his phone. I started walking again. He started walking. It felt like one of those retail worker horror stories you see on forums. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. I ducked into a 24-hour bodega, hoping to lose him. I walked down the cereal aisle, my hands shaking. I grabbed a box of cornflakes just to look busy. I looked up toward the front of the store. The guy in the blue hoodie was there. He was standing at the end of the aisle, just staring at me. He wasn't shopping, he was watching. Then the door chime rang. Ding dong. Another man walked in. My breath caught in my throat. This second man was wearing the exact same outfit. Baby blue, hoodie, white sweatpants, same brand, same fit. He walked up and stood right next to the first guy. They didn't speak. They didn't look at each other. They just stood shoulder to shoulder looking at me. Then a third man entered. Same clothes, same dead expression. It felt like a glitch in the Matrix. It felt like a nightmare where the logic of the world breaks down. Were they a gang? Was it a prank? Was it a cult? They weren't fighting, they weren't yelling, they were just present. A wall of pastel blue. I abandoned my cart. I ran to the back of the store and exited through the emergency fire. Escape. I ran all the way home, locking my door and pushing a chair under the handle. I never saw them again. But sometimes when I'm in a crowd, when I see a sea of people fighting for items they don't need, I look for that shade of blue. We chase deals. We chase objects. We fight over plastic and wires. And in the end, we are all just strangers in a crowd, wearing our uniforms, walking blindly into the dark. So, the next time you see a sale sign, the next time you feel the urge to push through a crowd, ask yourself, what is the real cost? Because sometimes the price you pay isn't on the tag. Good night, and stay safe. And if you enjoyed these 9 terrifying tales from retail workers, consider the next time you walk into a store and who might be watching you.